to almost 11,000 fatalities. And if you take a look at this cluster map, it shows the scale of the outbreak in each state, with hotspots growing in New York, Michigan, Florida, and Louisiana.
On one thing states across the country are in dire need of is N95 masks. And President Trump has reached a deal with 3M, its maker. The company will produce 166.5 million masks over the next 3 months. Of course, we've seen this impact the virus has had on healthcare workers, but also on New York's finest, the NYPD. Nearly 2,000 officers have tested positive for the virus, and so far 13 employees have died.
Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's health takes a turn for the worse. He was admitted into the hospital on Sunday and is now in the ICU. Just ahead, our Ali Arouzi is live in London with the latest on his condition. Starting today, Starbucks employees will now be required to wear face masks for those stores that are still up and running. The company says it's trying to comply with CDC recommendations.
And the Army has announced it's holding off on sending new recruits to basic training. This is expected to last for 2 weeks. Those already in basic training at one of the Army's 4 BCT locations will continue to be screened and monitored. Walmart and Kroger are taking new measures to keep shoppers safe. They've begun testing one-way aisles in some stores, trying to limit contact, and the policy could be rolled out to more U.S. stores.
Live classes at Peloton have come to a grinding halt after one of their production employees tested positive for the virus. The company will cease production out of their New York and London studios for the remainder of the month. Lady Gaga is using her star power to unite and raise some major bucks for the World Health Organization. The pop star is putting on a special concert along with Paul McCartney, Stevie Wonder, and other artists. It'll air right here on NBC on April 18th.
Despite predictions from the White House and health experts that this will be America's hardest hit week in the pandemic, there are some encouraging signs from parts of the nation. NBC's Susan McGinnis has details.
As America enters the most critical and deadly week for coronavirus yet, the U.S. death toll tops 10,000. Hospitals brace for an avalanche of new cases and deaths.
We're going to have a rough week. We're going to have maybe a rough little more than a week.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson admitted to intensive care.
Americans are all praying for his recovery. He's been a really good friend.
But the president combative when asked about an inspector general's report about shortages at hospitals.
What's his name?
It came from the Inspector General
what's his
report.
Name?
I don't know his name off the top
Tell me
of
his
my
name.
head.
Let me know, okay?
The president also brushing off criticism about the continued unavailability of tests.
We're the federal government. We're not supposed to stand on street corners doing testing.
Amid concerns about how deadly these next 2 weeks may be, traces of optimism. Washington State returning hundreds of ventilators to the national stockpile as new cases drop. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing a drop in hospitalizations and ICU admissions, but insisting New Yorkers must remain diligent in social distancing.